kind of recognition for their commitment and their sacrifices in protecting our freedom. Growing up, I always knew that he flew in a plane in World War II. I knew that he was an ex-POW. But as with many veterans, he didn't talk about it much, just bits and pieces here and there. Although I never knew all the details of his experience, he's always been my hero. So when he wrote his book several years ago, with the help of editor Jeff Duncan, who's here tonight, thank you, Jeff, and I read it, I definitely gained a new perspective for what he went through. A true hero. And some of this was mentioned, but let me briefly share his story. Carl Weller was born in Detroit on July 18, 1924. He attended Southeastern High School, and at age 17, when the war started for the U.S., he was willing to fight. Initially, he helped the war effort working in a bearing factory until he could be drafted. Once in the service, he requested to join the Air Corps, a childhood dream he had of flying planes. After training, he was assigned to be a waist gunner in a B-17 bomber piloted by Bob Felger and a crew of 9 brave men. The Fearless Fosdick was the name they gave their plane, after a cartoon character. Their crew was part of the 379th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force. And as she said, their first mission was interesting on D-Day. From that mission, they flew in 32 more missions, each with their own stories. From the time of losing 3 engines and having to throw extra gear out of the plane, landing short of the runway and then scattering as it burst into flames, to the long 12-hour missions in freezing temps with exploding enemy fire, sometimes watching other planes get shot down. But through it all, my grandfather liked to keep the crew's spirits up with his endless jokes and amazing talent for singing over the mic. But this all changed on August 13 during the 33rd mission. As they flew low along a road to France, the plane was hit and ultimately sent spiraling down. As he and several other crewmates jumped out, they had to watch in horror as the parachutes of 2 others caught fire and sent them plummeting to their deaths. I know that terrifying moment always stuck with him, as one of the men happened to be on his very first mission. Through a blitz of bullets he landed, and with a gun in his face, he heard the voice of a German soldier saying in broken English, "For you, the war is over." But this was just the beginning of his fight to stay alive as a prisoner of war. He persevered through starvation, avoiding friendly fire, crammed into barbed wire boxcars, and a near execution by drunken SS soldiers, eventually ending up in a prison camp in Germany. But despite all his hardships, he continued, in secret this time, to perform his little comedy and singing act for the weary men he was with. As the war ended, the POWs were commanded to march across the countryside some 450 miles. With limited food, dysentery, lice, my grandfather still managed to help others, like Bill Henderson, who later wrote in a dedication in his own book to Carl Weller, "Without his help, I never would have made it," a testament to the kind of man he is. Finally, weighing in at just over 100 pounds, he did make it to an American zone in Germany and was released. He had earned his freedom. As I just reread his book this week, I think one passage stood out to me. These are his words. "It was tough to take, but we were young." Remember, 18, 19, 20, not quite convinced of our personal mortality. And with so much death around you, you sort of pushed it to the back of your mind. You didn't let yourself think about it before a mission. You just couldn't. So yeah, we were scared, needless to say, but we weren't in a funk with fear. We weren't paralyzed. During a mission, when you were being attacked, you could get the heebie-jeebies, but you can manage them by focusing on your duties, on getting there, dropping bombs, and getting back. Usually the heavy fear would come, if it came, afterwards. Then going back over the mission in your mind, you could get the shakes, have trouble sleeping, panic attacks. I'm sure this is a sentiment shared by many of our brave combat veterans, something I can't imagine. And if you want to know more, buy the book. No, I'm not done. After the war, I would say Carl lived the American dream. He married his sweetheart, Iris Hendricks, Mickey, who had waited for his return from war, and they had 3 kids, Jim, Wendy, and Judy. He worked hard, never complained, was always generous, and kept many lifelong friends, and spoiled me. And of course, he never stopped telling those jokes and singing those songs. My grandparents settled here in Saline and bought the old Ford mill, where they worked endless hours and made many sacrifices to rebuild the old mill into the successful business it is today. We would honestly be here all night if I started those stories. Carl Weller had an unimaginable journey in his fight for our freedom, and for that, we are indebted to you. And we thank you for your service, Grandpa. Thank you, and thanks again to the city of Saline for honoring Carl Weller with this award.